Dr. Jeremy Weiss here. I'm founder of InspiredInsider.com, where I talk with inspirational entrepreneurs and leaders like the founders of P90X, Baby Einstein, Atari, many more, and how they overcome big challenges in life and business. This is part of the Skubana e-commerce mastery series, where top sellers and experts teach you what really works to boost your e-commerce business. Skubana is a software platform to manage your entire e-commerce operation. Today, I'm excited. We have Desiree Stolar. She's co-founder of Unshrinkit.com. Desiree, now I see you for real, not just on Shark Tank. Now, Unshrinkit.com is an emergency sweater saver. They have a patent-pending formulation that helps unshrink wool clothing back to the original size. They were featured on the hit TV show Shark Tank and got an investment offer from Mark Cuban. We'll talk about that. Desiree is an MBA from Harvard and a wool expert. This is my favorite quotable, was quoted saying, "This could change the world of yarn." Desiree, thanks for joining me.
Thank you for having me.
You know, we were talking right before, and I was like, what do you really want to talk about? And I love what you said. And you said, let's talk about the tough realities of entrepreneurship. So talk about some of those tough realities.
So I always joke with people that if progress was linear for an entrepreneur, everyone would do it. But it never actually is that way. It's always ups and downs, right. Pitfalls, valleys, really. I mean, it's both the ecstasy of the moment as well as the great despair. And right. I always joke with people that as long as it's the upward trajectory of the pits and valleys, then you're doing okay.
Yeah.
There is never a week in which all 5 days, everything that I have planned, every meeting that I'm going to attend, every goal that I have in terms of sales, that anything goes according to plan. Yeah. There's always some hiccup in terms of someone has decided internally that they don't want to have this in their product lineup, or for whatever reason, they have decided that they're going to go in a different direction with laundry, or someone calls me out the blue and says, I would like to make this order, and it's the largest one of the week. And I had nothing to do with it, but for some reason they saw something that I did 3 months ago that caught their attention, and a friend of theirs used it, and now they think it should be in their store. Yeah. And so I would tell people that it's good to have goals for each week. It's really good to continuously keep pounding the pavement and trying to get your product out there and making the right connections. Right. But on any given week, I have never strung together 5 perfect days. There'll be 2 great days, and then one day where nothing goes according to plan, and then I'll inch my way back up. And some people can thrive in that environment, and for others, that's a lot of uncertainty.
So, Desiree, tell me about one of the great despair moments.
I mean, this is peeking into Shark Tank, but I'm going to go ahead and go there.
Yeah.
Because it was by far the biggest.
The despair moment, Shark Tank.
Yeah. Yes. Oh, yeah. So let's just get straight to it.
Yeah.
Leading into our air date, we were episode 8 of season 7. Yeah. What an adventure. And I'm sure we'll talk about how we got to that stage. But by the time we were airing, it was supposed to be Friday the 13th, which I should have known from the get-go. It was a little ominous.
Bad luck. Right?
But Friday the 13th of November happened to be the day of the Paris attacks. And so on 5 o'clock, I received an email from ABC and Sony Studios that they were likely going to preempt us because there was something happening abroad that, depending on how it unfolded, it might not make sense to air Shark Tank.
Right.
Now, for those who are really big fans of Shark Tank and or just like to follow what we talk about, I'm sure you've heard that most companies have prepared a lot of inventory in advance for such a showing, which are cost involved anytime you have ramped up with your inventory. We also had a customer service team of over 10 people that were helping us because our product is not eating a donut or opening a card. There's a process to it.
You need to explain it a little bit.
Yes, there's a specific fabric and a specific process, and we wanted to make sure people were well informed. And then, quite frankly, we had a lot of back-end web and advertising things that were running in place in terms of campaigns that were all going to take advantage of that showing. Yeah. So between 5 and
MBA Harvard prepared, that makes sense. Yeah.
If there's one thing we're going to do, it's going to try to be prepared.
We're not going to wing this thing. Yeah. Okay.
So between 5 and 8, I was basically on the phones with everyone saying, I'm not sure if we're going to air. If we do air, this is what we should do. If we don't air, this is what we should try to do. Yeah. I don't know if they're going to start to air us and then cut away if something happens in Paris. there were a lot of contingency plans that were in place.
Yeah.
And without any warning whatsoever, we just started airing at 9 p.m. They started the show. Everything seemed okay. However, we noticed online that ABC and all six of the sharks, even though we were only going to be in front of five, all six of the sharks are well known for posting a lot of comments on Twitter and on Facebook during the hours of airtime to sort of galvanize the fan base and to get people excited about whatever it is they invested in. So they all put up the same tweets and picture across their channels, which basically was saying hashtag pray for Paris.
Right, right.
So contrary to other cycles, weekly cycles in which there's a lot of repartee between you and your shark or sharks that you rejected or engaged with, there was nothing for us.
There's a banter there that goes
Yes,
on.
yes. So, I mean, as any good marketer slash salesperson, even though I was in the middle of a huge party that my husband had thrown for me and people were talking to me and excited that our segment was going well, every 5 minutes I was refreshing all of our different pages, whether that be Amazon or Google Analytics, basically just trying to see really quickly what's going on. Is this going to be as big a night as we anticipated? And what Unshrinkit saw, and I mean, we're pretty decent friends with the other three teams that aired that night, and I don't want to give away their numbers, but for the most part, the average was that we saw about a fourth of the website hits that we would have expected and about a fourth of the sales that we would have expected. And for any business that has worked towards going into Shark Tank, it's almost like the Super Bowl for your business, and it's almost it's the equivalent of the Super Bowl losing power and and not happening when you're watching that unfold. And so I was up late watching Pacific Standard Time airing. I was up late talking to media who wanted to get my reaction to the Mark Cuban deal. And I went to bed around 3 a.m. and I was emotionally and physically spent because although our segment was very positive and we had an amazing edit in terms of, I think we did a good job on the stage, but what they showed in terms of 10 minutes just made us look fantastic. Really made our product look like something someone should want to try if they had an application for it. And so everyone was sending me, I mean, I was literally getting texts every minute from people saying, saw you, so happy. And meanwhile, I knew from the back end that it was not the night that we anticipated.
Right.
And so woke up on Saturday and had tough questions. Is it that Paris had some undue impact on us? Was it that people just didn't find that our product resonated with them?
Right.
It's
hard. There's so many variables there. It's hard to identify.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So my background is in media, so I knew where to look at the ratings from the night.
Yeah. Where do you look? Yeah.
Variety. Variety's done a pretty good job at overnights and then 3-day DVR ratings. And so I could tell immediately that a similar amount of people had watched Shark Tank that had watched it the previous night. And so there was this big question mark of, okay, if we had anywhere from 6 to 8 million people, why is it that they didn't go to our website or purchase in the same amount that we would have anticipated? And I reached out to a couple of my producing friends, and they said, look, we could tell on our end that this was going to be a crazy night for the four of you. And the last time this happened was 2011 with Osama bin Laden on a Friday night. And we just don't have a lot to go by. But we would tell you, don't freak out. Give it a couple days.
You're like, but I have 3 garages full of Unshrinkit. Like,
and I'm not
that's
joking.
easier for you to say, don't freak out. No.
My co-founder in Boston literally had a garage filled. I mean, we had our manufacturer that had a lot that had been sent out in huge pallets to Amazon, but we also had some for manual fulfillment in case that all ran out. And yes, we had garage full of inventory.
Right.
And so I asked the team, I said, look, it's too early to tell now what the full impact is, so let's give it a full week to see what happens.
Right.
So by Monday morning, I had over 800 emails to respond to.
Good luck. Yeah.
By Monday morning, in fact, starting as early as Saturday, we saw that the website hits started to tick upwards, that the sales were ticking upwards. Through the weekend, if not the full next 10 days, we more than blew through what we thought we were going to sell that opening weekend. And so also what came from that was that people responded very strongly to Lori in particular, not like truly getting on board
I
with.
was really surprised at that. Yeah.
Yeah, we were
Yeah.
too,
Yeah.
but sometimes things don't work out the way you anticipate. And people were emailing and saying, "Here's the contact information of my nearest craft store," or I'm in the military and I think the military commissariats should have this," or "I run 5 dry cleaners, we'd like to take an order." And so by the
That's
time I had
awesome.
made my way through the emails, we had a bunch of wholesale orders, we had some licensing offers, we had a couple acquisition offers. I had a lot of people just saying, "Love this, so glad you created it." Obviously, it's Shark Tanks. There were a couple people that said, "I don't like your product at all," but those were in the far minority. And then more importantly, we made up on the metrics that we were despairing about. And so I'm praying that no other Shark Tank team ever has to deal with what we went through, because ultimately that was caused by a horrible tragedy.
Right.
But it was a huge lesson for me that sometimes the dips will be all out, like huge holes in the ground, and you won't know if you're going to get out of it, and you need to give yourself a couple days, one, to breathe and get some sleep, and two, to let the market respond in a way that works for them. And basically what happened was people watched the show, but instead of doing the normal behavior where they immediately go to unshrinkit.com or go to our Twitter page, they were checking, it appears they were online checking out the latest news of Paris, which makes sense.
Yeah.
So it wasn't until 24, 48 hours later that they said, "What was that company that was unshrinking? Well, I thought they were cool." That's when they looked us up.
Yeah. That's
So
a
anyway,
crazy story.
I mean, I could write a book about the hour by hour play of that, but I won't bore you on it. But
No,
anyway,
it's not boring at all,
sure.
actually. So
It was-
would you recommend someone who's going to be aired not even have a party? Just like, should you have been locked in an office with a computer and a phone and just been coordinating? Because it sounds like you had a lot of coordination that you needed to do minute by minute.
So what we did, the biggest coordination, if you've done your job well, all happens before the airing. And you're only a 10-minute segment and a full hour. So there's room to actually be doing a lot of work in the segment before you, actually enjoy watching yourself for 10 minutes and then immediately go back to work. And that's basically what happened during that hour. Once it was over, I took about 25 minutes to answer Q&A from the crowd of people who had come to the party. And then I went back downstairs and did more work.
Yeah. So tell me about this. This is interesting. In preparation, right? So
Yes.
talk about those components of preparation, the back end. You talked about investing in a certain amount of bottles. How do you decide how many, and how do you project how many to invest in? How many did you actually, if you can't share the range that you actually end up getting?
No, that's fine. And I will say this because this was representative of us reaching out to people. And I would say that I joke with a lot of people, we should create a Shark Tank alumni group, because there are not that many of us. They only air about 100, at least since season 3, they've aired about 100 each season. And I mean, out of the 50,000 people that apply. So it's like a mini university of sorts.
Yeah.
And so I basically looked for people who had done something in the laundry space that was a consumer good, who had made a deal on the air, and reached out because I wanted to get it as close as possible to being something akin to us. And I also looked for things that were in our price point, so something that was between 10 and 20, because the last thing you want to do is ask someone who has a $60 specialty laundry basket what they did. But we then reached out to those companies and said,
what were some of the companies, and what did they say?
Well, I don't want to.
Oh, because I immediately go to Scrub Daddy is maybe one that would be seen that would be.
So Scrub Daddy, because they have, I mean, they're the king of all of Shark Tank
Sure.
in terms of.
I think the most successful, right?
Yes, by far. So most people don't even ask them because, one, all their metrics are publicly listed everywhere, and I feel like they update it every month or two anyway.
Yeah.
And second, they've just had a bonanza after their airing in season 5. What we did, because a lot of these people are entrepreneurs and they're very busy, I reached out to a lot of them, and most of them did, I will be honest, didn't get back.
Yeah.
But what I did was, I knew that, particularly for seasons 5 and season 6, a lot of people were very amenable to answering reporters' questions on, well, what did you do this weekend? Or how successful was the first month? And so I basically stalked all of the reports in which they came out in the first week after Shark Tank. and look to see what sort of business that they would talk about that they did. And sometimes they didn't talk about sales. Sometimes they talked about website hits, or they would talk about the growth in their social network. But I knew what our internal conversion rate was for people going from our website to actually purchasing a bottle, so I could sort of extrapolate from there.
Yeah.
If they were seeing X number of website hits, what should we start to see? So I had a range that was pretty wide, actually. It was from 3,000 all the way up to 10,000 for our category. And then what I did was
units of product.
Units of product that went out the door that first weekend. And so what I did was we sort of prepared for something slightly north of the mean, and then tried to we had a couple of backup plans, and if for some reason that went over. And so that's why we had product in the garage. That's why we had a manufacturing team that was ready to press go, on Monday if we needed more, etc.
Yeah. So talk about some of the back end, because you had people in place. So what was the important component that you knew you needed? You said you had a sales team. And how do you even train the sales team?
So we had a customer service team.
Customer service team. Okay.
Customer service team.
That's what I mean. Yeah.
Yeah. So what we have people who reach out to us across every possible channel we own. So I have people who will write me on Facebook, on Twitter, on our website, on our contact us page, who will call us, all asking similar questions. Can I use it? How does it work? Tried using it and have questions. Can I get this in Canada? Got a lot of, can I get this in Canada? Canada, it runs the gamut. And the cute thing is that people will email you about and give you the backstory of their scarf and why they want to save it, and then say, can I save it? It's X percentage merino, X percentage alpaca, and X percentage cashmere. And, they want an answer on that, and that's wonderful. Yeah. What we did was, one, we delegated who owned particular channels. So I'm particularly comfortable, very quickly writing and engaging with someone on the social media channels where people are a bit more demanding in terms of the speed in which you need to get back to them. Right. I had one of my co-founders who was manning the contact us page as well as the phone. And since that night in particular, we actually had most of the phone calls going directly to voicemail, so we could capture that phone number, get the full message, actually take our time in getting back to people. And he was manning that with a team of about 6 or 7 people. And what he did was help train them on what are the key things to recognize in the message in which you should know what information they're looking for, what is the tone that we're trying to respond to people. If for whatever reason they respond to you multiple times, because sometimes someone will create a conversation with you. How do you engage with that, but also make sure that at some point you're concluding what they need and moving on to the next person. So we in many ways just mapped out what are going to be the top 25, 30 questions we expect, and what are some of the key aspects of that you should answer. And then for the things that you could never anticipate, who do you call to give you more information? Yeah. But that customer service for us was particularly important, because when we did our first iteration of our product, we didn't focus on it too much, and we realized if you have something that is brand new to the market and you're creating a brand new category, a brand new product, you have to be overly proactive in reaching out and helping people.
So what have you learned from customer feedback?
One, that you have to stay even keeled, because you're usually going to get the happiest of people and the most upset of people. Right. And it's going to seem as though it's a roller coaster in which people love to hate your product. But in the grand scheme of things, what we discovered is about 90-95% of people never reach out to us at all. You're seeing the extremes in terms of people and their usage of the product. And then to always exercise a great deal of patience. We have worked with this product day in and day out now for 2 years. We know it backwards and forwards. If someone has just heard about our product and they watched a 10-minute snippet on Shark Tank, and they were eating dinner while they watched it, and the kid was, running around and doing something, all they really captured was something to unshrink clothes. Right. So they might not have caught the part where you said it's for wool or cashmere or wool blends. They might not have caught the part where they need to actually mix it with warm water, and to treat people as you would treat your grandmother, in terms of it takes her a little bit longer to pick up on it, and or she doesn't have as much context, but you should be just as caring and just as patient with her as you are with me.
Yeah. So, I mean, like, what was productive feedback? Like, that actually maybe helped you improve the product? Was there anything?
Oh yeah, absolutely. From the get-go, so our first iteration of the product, one, we had no manufacturer guarantee, which we quickly heard from people. They said, this is something that's brand new to me. Why should I take a chance on you on something that's not, I'm not getting in my store, that I haven't heard from my neighbors? All I've seen is your website. And
Yeah.
so we realized that if we felt confident enough in our product to be selling it and to be working on it full time, then the least we could do is say to someone, if you don't have a positive or the perfect experience, we're going to give you a refund. Like, that was something that we decided was
Yeah.
important. There were little things such as when we were doing all of our internal testing and testing with our analytical lab, we were working with liters. And when we mix Unshrinkit with 3 liters of water, a lot of people said, I never deal with liters in my home. I either deal with quarts or gallons. So I don't even know what the heck to use when you tell me this. Is there any way that we were getting lots of questions like, what does this mean in terms of things I have in my home? And so we updated our instructions so that it was very clear in a way that people understood. We also talked about with people, I'm trying to think what's another good one in terms of customer service.
What's the biggest objection you get, and then how do you overcome it?
Why don't you work on cotton? Why don't you work on cotton? And why can't I use this on cotton? And can I try it on cotton? Can I take a risk using it on cotton? And it's funny that they're so happy that you've even entered the space and you've done something specific to wool that they immediately wanted to then apply to other aspects of their life that would be helpful.
Yeah.
Now, I actually had a guy who said, I'm really excited about unshrinking my dollar pack of white T-shirts from Walmart. And it took me a lot to not laugh because
Right.
part of the reason why we did wool and probably why our next product will be for denim is
It's more
why
expensive.
pay $10-$12 to save something that is the same same amount as your item. You should go out and just buy a new one. And so
Right.
I say to people about cotton, I say, we know that you wear a lot of cotton and we know that you care to save it. To a certain extent, you and I both know that you're probably just going to go buy a new Old Navy t-shirt. You're not going to want to try to save it. End of story.
There are those old T-shirts that you probably have tried to throw away that your husband has, right? Those old cotton T-shirts.
Yes.
Yeah.
But it's really because they shrunk. It's normally because he's had them for way too long.
Exactly.
Yes.
That's true. So talk about the conversion rate. I mean, you were very methodical. What did you do to increase the conversion rate? And talk about that.
One, we tried to eliminate the pathway to getting to the purchase.
Okay.
So one of the things we did prior to Shark Tank, we actually had a very different website. It had a lot of content on the homepage. We had a lot of content on the product page. And it was more of an immersive experience in which someone was going to learn information about Unshrinkit.
Yeah.
And the guidance we got from people who had worked with other Shark Tank teams as well as previous Shark Tank teams was, one, you want to have the most efficient experience possible.
Yeah.
Someone comes to your website, you reinforce that they just saw you on Shark Tank, that this is the product for this particular use case, and they immediately are going to purchase.
And have a huge buy button on the page or something. Yeah.
Later on, they can figure out more information about your wool guide, and later, more information about your story about the two founders.
Yeah.
For that weekend, it should all be about sales. And so we cut down our content by almost 80%. So the website was very streamlined. Then we also we had several other platforms that we were redirecting people to and or just talking about, and we basically sent all traffic to Amazon.
Yeah, I saw that.
Yeah, and the thought was, we were prepared for a crazy number of visitors, but a great backup is to have your sales platform be something that's so large and so robust that
not gonna
even
break.
if we went down, people can still access Amazon and purchase it.
So was there a debate internally about, okay, do we send them to our own shopping cart? Do we send it to Amazon, or was it a no-brainer?
It was a no-brainer only because we had done that previously. So fall of 2014, we were selling on our website.
Yeah.
And what we discovered was people were spending more time trying to figure out, should they trust us? Should they purchase it? Were their reviews valid? But when we found that when we switched everything over to Amazon, they
Yeah.
trust that 1 through 5 star system. They trust those reviews,
Yeah.
particularly if they're verified by the purchaser. And there was a much faster, we went from around a 10-11% conversion to being something akin to almost 1 out of 4 were converting once they hit our
That's
price
amazing.
range. So it was worthwhile to keep it there and
Yeah.
just get people through the door.
Yeah. So what are you think are advantages and disadvantages of sending to Amazon for someone who's
The
debating it?
disadvantages are super, super easy. They own your customer data, and
Right.
it's the biggest trade-off you make. People who are within the Amazon platform love Prime. They love the ratings. They love the consistency of the interface, how quickly it is to make the purchase with the one click. But the one sacrifice you make is that you don't own
Yeah.
those. They're
That's a
Amazon
great
customers.
point.
So
Yeah.
if you want to send a huge blast out to everyone and say, it's been 2 weeks since Shark Tank and we want to hear about your experience, you can't do that to
Yeah.
those customers. So what we did to complement that, and they've done an excellent job, we work with this team called Feedback 5.
Sure. Yeah.
And you can leverage them to basically reach out to people post-purchase and to check in on the experience. And that's helped us better own the post-purchase experience.
Yeah.
But to a certain extent, that's the one big trade-off you make with Amazon. And I know that's why a lot of my entrepreneurial friends don't do it, because they want to create this huge database of people that are using it. But I find that their products are much more dependent on someone purchasing their product on a monthly basis. It's not a subscription service by chance, but they need more frequent purchases.
Yeah.
And our business model is one in which we need someone to purchase Unshrinkit every winter season.
Yeah.
So there's less pressure on. I'm not going to circle back with someone because it's Patrick's Day and say, oh, St. Patty's Day, have you unshrunk your ugly Patrick's Day sweater? That's not really an issue per se.
I guess you have to team up with that other one in Shark Tank, the ugly sweater company or something.
The Tipsy Elves.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah. That was actually the most surprising thing. They didn't show it completely, but Robert loved our product. And he was the most effusive. And then when it came time to dole out an offer, Damon was in there, Kevin was in there, Mark obviously jumped in at the last minute, but at no point did he sort of make a move. And we were very surprised because there was a natural compliment there to him already having.
You ship a bottle of Unshrinkit with every sweater. Or
Yeah,
something.
I know. Here's your insurance policy. Stay ugly.
So what else didn't we see that didn't air?
What else didn't we see? So there was quite a debate about.
How long were you up there?
We were there for 2 hours.
2 hours.
Yeah. Which I will tell you felt like 20 minutes. Yeah. And we walked off the stage and our associate producers said, great job. And we were like, wow, that just flew by. And they said, no, it didn't. You were there for a long time. And we said, how long? And it said 2 hours.
Wow.
Oh my gosh. Which then, of course, made me scared because I'm thinking, oh, God, they're going to cut down 2 hours to 10 minutes. What are they going to decide to... You could create a completely different Des out of 2 hours.
Right.
But let me think about what didn't happen. One, there was a pretty fierce debate about that market size. So they focused on Lori because we actually had a huge Facebook group of thousands of people who were going to watch it that night. And the poll question I had was, who do you think we made a deal with? And it was close to 75% thought we went with Lori.
Right.
Just why they showed it on the show. But
it seems like a good fit for like infomercial or something like that.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Now, one of our concerns was that she is a powerhouse at what we would call, at HBS, we would call it sustaining innovation. So the product is already in the market and someone has come out with a slightly better one or a slightly cooler one. She's very, very good with products where she doesn't have to explain it to you that this is a sponge. What's cool is that this sponge can flip and, can do the hard stuff and the soft stuff. Or here's a purse that can also carry your phone. Like it's intuitive.
You can look at it and get it.
Yes. She very rarely will go with something where she has to educate the market.
So let me back up for a second, Desiree, because people don't truly understand the research that both you and Nate did for this, okay? Because I was doing my own research, and you were spending how many hours per week for how long preparing for this?
It was a full-time job.
Yeah.
So at the time, it was the spring of 2015.
Yeah. Because this is not random. You guys put a Excel spread. I mean, talk a little bit about what.
Yeah.
What the
So
preparation you
we
did. Yeah.
decided that we were going to download the seasons 3 through 6 because those included Mark Cuban, and we knew he would be there for season 7.
Right.
We watched the shows, and with the database, I probably went a bit overboard, but I felt like every detail could eventually be helpful. So I had the company, the people that came out to represent it, their gender, their roundabout age, what they were wearing, what they asked for, how they pitched, like what did they have on the set, what questions they received, what pushback they received, who ultimately offered a deal, what was some of the negotiation that went on there, and then if did they walk away with a deal or did they say no, etc. And so we did that for every single segment to try to pick up trends for what things might unduly set a shark off. Like the last thing you want is to say something that has obviously been shown in a different season where they hate that phrase, where they hate this.
So what were
particular
some of
approach.
those things that they hated?
I mean, so people who come in who don't really understand their customer acquisition costs, or people who come in and for whatever reason, the lack of sales is because they have outsourced everything to someone else and haven't actually tried to go and talk to people.
Yeah.
Or, with Lori, her zero hero thing, we knew that we had, as best possible, needed to try to defend our market size. We thought that was something that she might be worried about. And so we had 3 or 4 different counter arguments for her for how to defend what we thought would be our market size. We knew we knew the hobbies and the interests of all of the sharks. We knew where they were from. We wanted to make sure that Kevin knew that we were from Boston. We knew that Mark would care that Nate was right near where he used to grow up in Pennsylvania. Everything that we could possibly capture about them. We knew everyone.
You were maximizing.
We knew the ages of their children, who actually might have things in their home that were shrunk, who did their own laundry.
You're like Mark Cuban. I talked to your wife the other day. She says you do need this product, and she shrunk your favorite Mavs sweater or something. Yeah.
Ultimately, it came down to there have been other entrepreneurs who, for whatever reason, had to go to the fire and messed up or lost out on a deal because they didn't know this information. Yeah. And the least we can do is learn from what they had to experience and not make that same mistake. So we were between the preparation for the pitch, working with the producers, finishing up our what we wanted to showcase for our product, and actually just doing the research. It ranged anywhere from 20 to 40 hours a week.
Yeah, that's what I read. Yeah.
A lot of people spend their last semester at HBS going to dinners, bonding with people, traveling, doing an independent project. I was basically non-existent to people. Yeah. People joked, but I had 4 hours a week that I devoted to social activities. And I would literally leave a party after like an hour and 20 minutes and say, this is my cap. I need to go. Because I had a husband who lived in D.C. I had cases to read. And there was just so many hours in the day.
So what numbers, Desiree, did you and Nate prepare ready for Shark Tank?
In terms of what we wanted?
What you wanted, and also to answer questions.
Sure. So good grief, the whole thing. We knew our business numbers inside and out in terms of, if they asked about last 6 months, last year, the totality of our company, what were our projections in terms of sales, and what were we expecting to do over the next, by month, by year, next 5 years. We also knew our costs. We knew our revenues versus our profits. Like, one of the things that we were always worried about is that it's not that people don't know their business. It's that most people are in front of these sharks for an hour to 2 hours. And after a while, you might get flustered, you might get nervous. Yeah. And what they're looking for is to see, do you know your business so well that even under intense pressure, you don't contradict yourself or make a mistake? And so the last thing you want to do is mix up revenues with profits, or mix up your COGS if you were to scale at X level versus a different level. We just wanted to make sure that we didn't make dumb mistakes. And then in terms of the negotiation, you might have noticed this. I purposely wanted Nate to lead that because he does numbers exceptionally fast in his head.
Mm-hmm.
I can do numbers fast if I'm sitting in my room by myself, but under pressure,
Yeah.
that is not my forte.
Yeah.
And so I wanted someone. We knew that we wanted to stay somewhere in between 10 and 18% of giving away our company, which is a very, very narrow
It's a
window
small
for
window. Yeah.
Shark Tank.
Yeah.
And we needed to be able to play around with that and needed someone who was going to be comfortable just sort of going tit for tat with them. And so that's
Yeah.
why Nate led that part.
So give people an idea, Desiree, going into Shark Tank. How long was the company in existence, and then how many sales did you have at the time going in?
So going into Shark Tank, we had been around for basically a year. So we incorporated in June of 2014,
Yeah.
filmed in June of 2015, but we had not sold a bottle. We didn't start selling it until September of 2014. So we were basically coming to the conclusion of our sweater season, which is September through May, and before we were going on Shark Tank. And one of the concerns that our friends had. Now, here's the funny thing. Until the moment you apply to Shark Tank, you tell everyone, "Oh, I'm planning to apply to Shark
Right.
Tank. I'm really excited." As soon as they express an interest in you, you have to pretend that nothing is happening.
Yeah.
And so there's so prior to being told they were interested, I was asking people. I said, "Should we go on? We've only sold about 4,000 or 5,000 units," and everyone said, "Oh no, it's too early. It's too early. They're gonna eat you alive. Shark Tank has gotten too big for the small businesses. That's you would have been great in seasons 2 or 3, but now they're looking for the $1 million offers and the
Mm-hmm.
people who are making 300,000 and annual revenue already." And I said, "Well,
Who's saying
wait."
that?
I mean, so basically, all of the Shark Tank fans are people who they
Oh,
think know
I
Shark.
gotcha. So it's
And
not
I
like an associate producer at Shark Tank that's saying it. It's like,
no,
okay,
not at all. These are both intense and casual fans who,
right,
in
right,
their perception, Shark Tank gets bigger and bigger each year. So
right.
to make people's jaws drop, they need to have bigger bets, bigger asks, etc.
Yeah,
And I said, "Look, I hear you, but at its core, Shark Tank was made to be the American dream during the recession.
right.
Small businesses couldn't get loans, so this was the place you went for anything from 50,000 to 200,000, so that you could keep your business going or make it grow. So they still need businesses like myself that are going in with, you know, a new business, not a lot of sales, but a lot of promise,
Yeah,
and a decent amount of revenue that shows that we're not just sucking in money, that we're actually making money off of it too."
mm-hmm.
And so it was a risk. It was always a risk that they said, "This is too early. You haven't proved yourself. Sell more bottles, etc." And that's probably why we went the extra mile in preparing, because we felt if we could truly nail the questions and our plans, that they could have confidence that we as a team were people worth investing in.
What question were you most nervous to get into and debate and answer?
Probably the market size, because
Yeah,
we had at that point we were part of the multiple accelerators. We were at the Harvard Innovation Lab. We were part of Mass Challenge. We had pitched at the New Venture Competition out of Boston.
yeah,
We had pitched at Thai Boston, which was basically a local Shark Tank event for people. And each and every time, judges basically bifurcated. It was they completely got the market size,
right.
never questioned it, and wanted to hear how we were going to execute against that,
Yeah,
or they didn't get it at all and they couldn't see past anything else. It was, "But tell me how is this going to be something that
yeah,
could have a great return?"
yeah,
And so the last thing we wanted was all of our time in front of the sharks to be about market size, when there were so many more interesting things
yeah,
about the future of the company and or what we had currently done that would really sort of sell them. And so we had prepared the heck out of that, in terms of not just talking about what we had done to date, but what was coming down the next 6 months, as well as what we were planning to do once we had the funding. Um, and the nice thing, which I don't know if they showcased it as much as they did, but 4 out of the 5 never really questioned it. In
yeah,
fact, there was a really, really beautiful moment, at least for me, where the 4 sharks, who were all men, because Barbara wasn't part of our group, were sort of turning to Lori and saying, "We just don't understand why you don't get this," because the QVC woman is normally a married woman with kids who I'm sure is making mistakes and or doesn't take all of her laundry to the dry cleaners. She's doing a lot at
Yeah.
home, and we get this. And
Yeah.
um, one of our biggest fears was that you need people who are engaging with laundry and have like a real life and make real life
Right.
mistakes. And all of these people
You're
are
wondering like how
multi-millionaires.
much are some of these people doing
Yeah, yeah, I mean,
laundry?
they're multimillionaires and they have people
Right.
who do their laundry. And
Right.
the great thing, thank God, is that like Damon, Kevin, Mark, and Robert all started from very humble beginnings. Um, in fact, Lori did too, to a certain extent. But I mean, I want to say for a longer period of time, she's had it. She's been doing quite well. But all of them come from relatively humble beginnings. They remember those days of making mistakes, and that's what helped us.
Yeah.
I think if we had started out with people who had always been well off, that might have been a harder sell.
Yeah. So after Shark Tank, Desiree, so those are the numbers before. What can you share after? What were sales like after?
Um, let's say that so it's December 2015, and we've already doubled all of what we did of last year,
Huh.
and we're only halfway through the season. So
Congrats. That's awesome.
yeah,
So what's the next step in execution? Like you were saying, people want to know, and you wanted to answer how you're
yeah,
going to execute.
yes.
So what's working best now after? Because people will think, well, that's right. That's easy. You had Shark Tank, but
Oh yeah,
but
yeah,
once the Shark
yeah.
Tank buzz dies down, you
Yep.
start to have to execute a different game plan. Obviously, that's actually your wheelhouse is the media side of things. So that was
Yes.
perfect.
Yes.
So you maximize that. Now, what is working best on a day to day without like a huge explosion from Shark Tank?
Exactly. So the biggest thing for us has actually been a ground game with the wholesale accounts.
Mm-hmm.
So what we do is we reach out. To me, it's all about going local. So general merchants, knitting shops, universities, dry cleaners. That has been our game from the get-go because you want to be in places in which people are contextually thinking about your product or laundry
Right.
and or that's where for the example of universities, our biggest surprise our first year was that 40% of our customers were young men between about 18 to 25
Really?
doing laundry for the first time. And so
They
I mean
shrink everything.
I mean, not to knock the young men, but they seem to
It's
be.
okay. We're not that smart when it comes to a lot of things,
I mean,
especially laundry.
I just noticed
Yeah.
that every guy I know just throws all their laundry in together, and
For
they just it
sure.
all
I
comes
still
out
do that.
okay.
Yeah.
And it doesn't work that way. You have to sort. So
Yeah.
anyway, what we've been focusing on is completely separate from Shark Tank. And guess what? The whole world doesn't work Shark Tank. You can say that to people and they say, "Oh, that's cool," but most often than not, they haven't heard about Shark Tank. If
Right.
anything, it's an extra cachet later when you say, "Oh, yes, and this was also featured on the show." But for us, it's been a very strong and consistent outreach effort
Yeah.
to saying this is
How did you identify that? Like
how.
how did you identify that you like young males in
Mm.
universities would be one of the biggest customers?
So
Because
they
I would think, oh, like moms is
Oh, that was our first
perfect, right?
beginning.
Right.
We spent a lot of our we didn't have a lot of money to spend, but what money we did spend, we spent it on mommy blogs and reaching out to moms and
Yeah.
saying influential moms and saying, "Will you write about us?"
Yeah.
And while that was very effective, when we first started, we were on our own platform on Shopify. And I kept seeing these male names come in, and by all means I don't want to stereotype when I'm seeing a name, but when
Yeah.
Barry comes in or when Luke comes in, it's obviously a guy.
Luke, yeah.
And
Yeah.
so and so I was putting in the addresses, and I could tell that the address was in
Hmm.
university regional code. And then what we actually did was, after we had sold about 5,000, you got to take advantage of your resources that are free.
I love hearing a
I-
methodical mind. So yeah, keep going with this. Yeah.
So I downloaded all of our geocodes and sent them off to a lab at Harvard. It was a bunch of grad students who were actually collating and were willing to run for you a map of where you were selling your product.
That's cool. Yeah.
And one, I wanted to disprove from people that were concerned that we didn't sell in Florida and Texas and California, because we do sell a lot of bottles there. They're very sensitive to sweater weather under 65 degrees. But second, I wanted to see where if we were having hot spots around
Yeah.
locations, and that's
Yeah.
what was
So what'd you find? What were the hotspots?
well, one, it was I thought it was going to be, our assumption going in
Yeah.
was that it was going to be metropolitan areas, that it was going to be quarter metropolitan areas, and that it was going to be mainly moms. What came out was that from a gender distribution, it was 60-40 female male. That in terms of location, we were getting suburbia as well as what I'd call residential city areas outside of a city, as well as the city itself. Not a lot on the rural side. And I want to say that's probably because they might do a better job of taking time to wash their clothes. We're still working out the assumptions there. But then more importantly, that we were in the pockets that were rural, it was because it was near a university. So a good example of that. So let me think of a good one. So Blacksburg in Virginia, which most people don't even know what the heck that is, unless you're a football fan. That is where Virginia Tech is.
Right.
And the concentration was Blacksburg, so it was the college town
Right
I was
around the
supposed to-
university.
Yeah.
So how do you get in the hands of those people? What now you know where they live. So what do you
Yes.
do to get it in the hands of them?
So it's one of the things that we're actually building out right now is a mini sales force of students at those universities because we do have contacts at the bookstores, but the faster way to do it is to get it into people who will be in many ways an ambassador for you on the campus and actually talk about it to other people, use it, have it in their room. That's one of the ways that we feel that it's going to work faster. This is probably because I'm an entrepreneur, but I'm a huge fan of avoiding bureaucracy. And when you go top down and you have to go to the university and then the bookstore and get on the shelf and then there's placement fees and the whole 9 yards, that can be a whole year before you're in front of the student.
So you really do a grassroots effort
Yes.
to get it in there. So where do you start with that? Because, I mean, this is helpful for any business, right? To have a grassroots effort for something like this. Are there companies out there that will help you get in front of college students, or do you just have to go out and do guerrilla marketing style?
There are companies, I joke with people, when it comes to sales and marketing, there's a plethora of companies. You will never have a shortage of companies that will focus on just one thing and help you do it. But ultimately, if you want control over what they're saying, how it's being done, and or you want it to happen faster and cheaper, you should try to do it yourself. So what I did, because we've always just been very careful with every dollar that we have, is that I started out with universities that we know. So I knew Harvard and I knew University of Virginia because that was my undergrad. With Harvard, there were several different laundry places right there near us in Cambridge. So we walked over to the dry cleaners and came with our bottles and our packaging and said, will you have this here in your dry cleaners? We can do it on consignment. Start here.
So no risk for them, essentially.
Yeah, no risk whatsoever. And meanwhile, it creates a relationship. They learn a little bit more about the product. The next time people are coming in and they're already in the mindset of taking care of their nicer clothing, it's something that's there. We also reached out to student groups that were focused on helping businesses in the area and asked for them to so for example, and maybe this is just HBS, but there are a lot of ugly sweater parties. And I didn't hesitate to reach out to any person I knew that was in a particular location representing Harvard or UVA and say, do you mind receiving 6 bottles of Unshrinkit for your ugly sweater party? They're already in the context of wearing sweaters. You can give it out for free. We can be the prize for the ugly sweater party. Use the bottles as you see fit. But what I find is that if I send 6 bottles to an ugly sweater party, we have people coming back saying, we gave your information out to people. We have people following up saying we'd like to buy a bottle, and those 6 bottles are very quickly going out the door. And so it amplifies our message in the areas that we want.
Yeah.
For example, University of Virginia, I reached out to friends and said, I'm not there right now. I haven't been on campus in almost a decade in terms of an actual student. Can you let me know what are the most respected dry cleaners in the area that either do a concierge service for students and or just the go-to places? And they put me in contact with them, and that's how I could quickly get the information and say, can I send you a bottle? Yeah.
So what else is working with increasing sales, the grassroots effort?
So completely opposite from grassroots effort is going abroad. So one of the things that happened after Shark Tank was that on a daily basis, we were getting dozens of emails from people in Canada saying, can we please get this? Can we please get this before the holidays? Now, Canada has the lovely province of Quebec, which has a lot of different regulatory needs because it's a majority French-speaking province. But what we did was we opened up international shipping for
Mm.
Canada just to test out how well is it going to ship. Are people just saying that they want it, or are they actually going to purchase it?
Is there a lot of red tape to get that set up for you?
Yeah,
Or?
I mean,
Yeah.
a lot and a little. It's a little if you're willing to spend a lot of money to make it go fast, and it's a lot if you're any small business and you want to just be very careful with how you're spending your money, and or you don't want to have to completely change your packaging for Quebec.
I see.
Um,
Right, because you have to put
yeah,
French.
yeah, and it's not just
Yeah.
that you need to call out French for your product identity. You need to actually have the French version be larger, and there's certain things that you have to change to your warnings and whatnot.
Mm.
So we opened up international shipping so that people from Canada could purchase it. And what amazed me was that it actually, one, it showcased to us that there really was demand. So we're actually going through the process from a high level regulatory standpoint of actually getting it into the country as well as
Yeah.
for the EU, Australia, and New Zealand.
Yeah.
But it also gave us a little bit more insight into the price elasticity for our product. So Lori actually called this out.
Yeah.
So she thought it was priced too high. And I know her sweet spot is things.
Were you saying it was $11 to $14 or what?
So we told her on the show we retail 12 to 14, 12 to
12 to
15,
14,
and we
yeah.
normally sell it for $12.
Right.
And she thought that was too high. And the funny thing for us is, one, $12 has never been, at least from what we can tell, has never put a damp in our sales or the demand.
Yeah.
But for Canada and Europe, there have been people who have purchased it who have paid $10 to $15 for shipping. So
So
if we
it's
were to-
like
if we
$25,
actually-
$30.
Yeah. So once we
With the
actually
exchange
have it-
rate and everything
Yeah.
too.
So when we actually get it into the country, there's a lot of room for us to even charge a higher price.
Yeah.
Now, granted, I've always wanted this to be something that's accessible, a mass product that people are picking up at the same time they do their detergent and their dryer sheets, etc. I don't want it to be some premium niche product, but if anything, that was another data point for us that we are at the right price point, because if someone's willing to pay twice as much just to get it,
Yeah.
and they live elsewhere, then we're doing it.
Yeah. So wholesale's working, grassroots, international. So what have you found that you thought would work that has not worked? That you had to stop doing?
So one of my it's been a enigma to me is that the most avid group, people that there is no price point by which they would want this product, or they would pay $100 to have it, are knitters, crafting groups.
They will not pay for it.
No,
You're saying?
that they would pay $80.
Oh, they pay a
this
lot.
bottle.
Okay.
Is the knitting craft group,
Mm.
and that, just to break it down for you, imagine that they have bought a skein of wool.
It's taken them like 3 years
Yeah,
to
it's
do
taken
something.
them
Yeah.
4 months to make
Yeah.
a sweater for someone. It's some
Yeah.
intricate pattern that they learned. They spent a good, if it was premium wool, maybe $40, $50 just on the wool. Then it's their
Yeah, yeah.
time involved. Then it was for someone, and it was a gift to some nature. And then the recipient shrinks it.
So remind me of this, Desiree, because I've interviewed and know some of the top
Yeah.
e-commerce yarn knitting e-commerce sites that I've talked to. So
Yes.
yeah, so I'll have to tell you about those. So go on. Yeah.
Yeah, so when we first launched, we were covered on Ravelry, we were covered on Knitting Paradise, we were covered on Knitter's Review.
Yeah.
Blogging sites about it, the whole 9 yards. And so I always thought it was going to be the easiest sell ever to put it in front of knitting and craft shop owners and say, purchase this, don't you want it? And what has fascinated me is that it has just not resonated with the owners as
really?
much as it has with the actual makers or consumers or
The consumers
or
it
owners of
resonates
products.
with, but the owners
owners-
don't see it.
No, and they're more. And what's interesting is that they care a lot about the wool, the dyeing, the tools to actually making something, but they're not as interested on the back end. If once someone has already finished making it,
I see.
they've washed it. How do they save it?
I
per
see.
se?
They geek
And
out
they're-
on the knitting part, but they could care less about afterwards. And the people, that's a
Absolutely.
real problem for some of these people.
Absolutely. And I mean, every once in a while, I'll have a knitting shop that says someone came in and they wanted it because they shrunk something and they would like it. But I
Hmm.
have found them to be
It's
a
interesting.
relatively resistant group. It's always
Wow.
been on the consumer side, never from
Yeah.
the knitting shop side.
Wow. So what else have you found that you tried that has not worked that you're surprised about?
There's a whole list of these things.
What would
I
Nate
mean, this
say?
is
What
this is
would?
like trial and error, but I'm thinking of
Yeah.
a good one.
Yeah.
Um, I'm very, very thoughtful on how we do online ads,
Yeah.
if at all.
Yeah. Talk about
So
online ads.
I
Yeah.
know a lot of businesses invest a great deal of money in um, social media ads and online ads. Retargeting ads, I think, have some value because if someone has gone as so far as to visit your website and for whatever reason they didn't put a product in the cart,
Yeah.
I think it's valuable to follow them along their online uh, experience and to remind them that they were at some point were interested in the product.
Yeah.
But I have found that organic engagement with people, particularly on Twitter and Facebook, has been so much more valuable than
Hmm.
posting up Facebook ads
Yeah.
um, or Twitter ads. Uh, I have searches
Like
for
content
all very. I
marketing
have
type of stuff.
Yeah,
Like.
I mean, I have saved searches for all things related to shrinkage and sweaters and wool on Twitter, and if I see someone with a message and within a reasonable amount of time, I'm getting reaching out to them and saying that
Right.
I can save it. That is so much more effective
Right.
than trying to winnow down on all the
Right.
different levers that you have with a social media ad to try to reach the target group, which in
Yeah.
many ways is for us is very context driven. It's
Right.
that they're doing laundry and they know
Yeah.
they make this mistake and or they just made it.
Yeah. You know what was funny, and that reminds me of the Shark Tank, because both you and Nate, obviously I don't know you that well, but you both seem very very conservative. As far as professional conservative, that he comes out with saying about shrinkage. And
Oh
and
God! So I will tell you that the pitch is a baby that you produce with the producers. It is not. It's rare. It's very rare that it's something that is representative of what you as the founders wanted to do. We probably did 50 iterations of that opening pitch, and
right,
the goal. And you see this with any Shark Tank episode. Their goal is to sort of hook someone in the first minute of your pitch, and
right,
then you'll watch the remaining 15 minutes.
right,
And frankly, if they can hook you in from the opening pitch, they normally have you for the rest of the hour.
right.
So their
You were
goal.
testing what the opening lines were going to be. So what were
We,
some of the
we
things that
wanted,
lost? Yeah.
oh God, I'd have to look them up. I mean, a lot of them had to do with making fun of the story when I was at Harvard Business School, and when I tried to fix my sweater, I ended up having a crop top. We had a couple of jokes that were directed at particular sharks, and at the end of the day, they wanted something that was going to make
Like a one-liner. Yeah.
well eyebrows raise and almost like a huh, like what's going on here, and it got that reaction. I mean, even my our friends and our spouses who had seen us at some point practice indoor, I after it was over, let them know, at least, I mean, Nate and I definitely told our spouses because you have to travel to LA. You need to let your spouse know if you're leaving the state for someplace.
Right.
And they even forgot about that line and they loved it when they saw it
Yeah.
and they laughed. And um, that one was one that we planted and we thought if that one lands well,
Yeah.
we might have a chance. The other one was, and I still blush, even though you can't tell because I'm black, but I still blush every time I think about it. The I look good, don't I? I cannot believe I did that in front of the sharks, but I did.
So
And
that was planned or was not planned?
oh, it was planned.
Oh, it was planned. Okay.
It was planned, but the level of sass that I did there was I
Yeah.
think I tried to make it really make it a moment.
Yeah. Now, I mean, that's a good direct mail piece to college males. Do you experience shrinkage? Question mark in the dorm rooms, and then they're all going to read that.
Who wouldn't? In fact, I don't know any male who wouldn't read that, college or otherwise.
So, talk about the Mark Cuban investment a little bit and what advice he's given you in working with him.
Sure. So this is I will give you short and long answers
Yeah.
because you deserve both. The short answer is that we didn't close our deal with Mark.
Hmm.
So the advice we received from him was non-existent because we never actually were in a room with him.
Hmm.
We spent all of our time with his business team. Um, and I mean, to the deal not closing, I think most people know this, that you shake on the set, but then there's a lot of
Due diligence.
well, more contractual things like term sheets and
Hmm.
negotiations on what is going to be the nature of our partnership with one another and
Right.
how long will that play out, etc. And that can, one, take time if you have a difference of opinion on how that should look, and two, as you get closer and closer to a potential air date, you as a founder and an entrepreneur need to decide, to what extent do I want to move forward with someone who at this point has 90 other companies that they're working with,
Yeah.
or do I take a risk and simply leverage the additional awareness and the additional sales and potentially find alternative investors who might be able to engage with me on
Mm-hmm.
a closer basis, and more likely are really passionate not just about consumer goods but about laundry or something particular to what you're doing.
You need someone who's going to say, this is going to change the world of yarn. That's who you need
Yeah,
as an
yes,
investor.
or revolutionize laundry, and is really passionate about that.
Hmm.
But one of the reasons why we selected him is because we call him the entrepreneur's entrepreneur. He never, at least in my opinion, has never really lost that touch of, I want to see hustle, I want to see
Right.
full commitment, I want to see
Yeah.
people who are working as hard as possible to make their business grow. And so just being around his business team, we were constantly pushing ourselves to exceed goals, to close deals,
That's the
because
underlying
that's
value that
yeah,
they
because
have too.
that's the essence that he puts forth to people. And
Yeah.
the last thing you want to do is to be working with Mark Cuban and he think that you're not trying hard enough.
Right.
It's horrible.
Yeah.
But what I did learn from his business team, one, I am 200% smarter on how to think of term sheets and how to negotiate on behalf of my business, having engaged with them. And I mean, these are nice guys from Texas. I'm not joking. I decided to fly down to Dallas to visit them, and they said I was the first person that Mark Cuban has ever signed a deal with, or shook his hands with a deal with, who actually decided to visit them.
Wow.
First time ever.
That's
So they took me
wild.
out to lunch, and I got to learn a lot about how they partner with businesses and how they support them.
Mm.
And so it's not one of the things I love is that we were very well informed of what a partnership with him would have been like,
Yeah.
and I think still made a really good decision for our business.
So ultimately, the terms didn't mix with both parties.
Yeah, no, they
Yeah.
didn't. But I mean, and at the end of the day, we are incredibly grateful because I think more so than any other shark, Mark Cuban is the one that if he makes a deal with you, people who don't even care about consumer goods and certainly don't care about laundry, they will look you up because they want to say, what did Mark Cuban invest in? That's interesting.
Interesting.
The other four, and this is not a knock against them, but they like Lori and Damon, even Kevin, to a certain extent, people think, well, they like consumer goods and they like things that moms might like. And so they just think for whatever reason, it might be a personal reason or an affinity reason that led them to it. But Mark, they know that quite often, if it's not his bread and butter, which is tech or something that is that appeals to him from a sports perspective, if it's something completely out of his wheelhouse, they will take the time to understand and look into you.
Mm-hmm.
And I, if anything, I think that's why we got a lot of attention from what I would say surprise license and acquisition and interested parties,
Yeah.
because they said, what is this company that Mark Cuban gave
Yeah.
some attention to?
I mean, you're going to have future partners in whatever respect, but so what did you learn from the team, the support team from a partnering perspective that you could take in other people?
The basic stuff.
Yeah.
So leading into the airing, they had really detailed thoughts about how can you best optimize your website to translate to sales, and what are some of the things that you can do in the back end to actually accelerate the right people getting through the funnel to making a purchase. They had specifics on
So
who
was
should
this
be our
stuff you already talked about with the back end or something
um
different?
yes and no. So they actually had suggestions for rejiggering the menu, what things should actually be on the opening page. Like, and I appreciated that was the level of detail in which they wanted to help someone
Yeah.
uh, have an ideal website for that night. But then on the back end, I don't know that a lot of business teams will dive into who's your hosting provider and how are
Mm-hmm.
you redirecting DDoS attacks and what are you thinking about in terms of uh, maximizing um, once you've maximized your traffic, how are you making sure that you're filtering those people into the right places and making sure that for those that you think might be repeat purchasers,
Yeah.
that you're getting them to sign up for your newsletter. It was just a level of attention that I thought was really well
Yeah.
done.
Yeah. So I have a few more questions, and I just realized I'm like the Shark Tank pitch that took 2 hours. It seemed like 20
I know,
minutes.
I
I'm
saw the
looking
time
up.
and I'm like, oh my
It's
goodness.
a full. We're at the hour, so I can wrap it up, or I can ask a few more questions. I don't know what
Yeah,
what
let's
you have.
compromise. Well, that's two more questions.
Okay.
We'll go with that.
I could go with 100 more, but I'll go with
Oh
two.
man.
No, I'm just kidding. We haven't even talked about before all this, before even selling, Desiree, you guys have to create a stellar product. And
Yes.
so I want you to talk a little bit about the creation and actually testing of something that's proprietary,
Oh my goodness.
because that's not an
Uh,
easy task in itself. Now we're talking about now you're selling it, but you had to actually create it and test it.
yes.
Yeah,
And I will give full shout out to Nate here.
yeah,
When I went to him, crop top and all, saying this is something we have to fix, I knew that more than likely we were going to need a chemical product to do it. But
yeah.
he was, I mean, at no point was there any hesitation to reach out to Bloomberg and say, "Hi, we need to research the science behind wool shrinkage. Do you know where we should
They're
look?"
like, who are
And
you?
yeah, I know.
Yeah,
And he said, I think there's some books at the Cornell Fiber Science Department. Since we're all Ivy League, is there any way that we can get those on loan? And they arranged for us to have these huge 1950 textbooks sent to us. We ordered about a dozen active ingredients and tested them first in our dorm. What Nate did, given his product development background, was that he had a very rigorous process for how are we going to, what are the benchmarks for success? How are we going to repeat that?
yeah.
And the first 2 months was basically us just being mad scientists in our dorm
Mm-hmm.
room. And we felt
I
as though
have this written down about you on my sheet of notes as a mad testing scientist. So yeah,
yeah. um, after 2 months, we felt pretty confident that we had something that was working, and not just working, but in the home ingredients, but just was working really well enough that we thought it could be a product. And so
yeah,
Nate pretty quickly reached out to Lano and Anasazi, which is an IP law firm in Boston, and said, we'd like to start looking into the patent protection for this. And that was something that I would recommend to any entrepreneur.
mm-hmm.
If you think you have created something, found something that is proprietary, and potentially can be easily replicable, don't hesitate to try to plant a flag. By all means, it's no guarantee that it's going to go through, but the worst thing you can do is say that for a couple $1,000s, I didn't try to protect something that was my idea.
Yeah.
In terms of the testing, though, this was almost a year process.
Yeah.
So that
People don't realize this, and that's why at the top of the interview, when you talk about the tough realities, it's not like you just threw together this. This is a process. Yeah.
I mean, one, it was just getting over the disbelief from a lot of people that we could do something of this nature, because wool manufacturers, PhD chemists were saying, "Wait a minute, your science makes sense, your process makes sense. How did you guys figure this out?" And we said, "Well, we just read and we tried to figure out what was the reaction that was happening, and we tried to figure out active ingredients that would reverse the reaction, and we played around in our dorm rooms, and this is what occurred."
Yeah.
But after getting it validated by other chemists, we spent almost a year trying to figure out, okay, our base ingredient works on loosely knit sweaters and sweaters that haven't had that much shrinkage. But guess what? Americans make really bad mistakes sometimes in the laundry room. So we need something that's going to work for the really shrunk sweaters
Toughest
as best possible.
cases. Yeah.
Yeah, and also for ones that are very tightly wound. I mean, to a certain extent, we've cracked this nut, but there's still some work to be done. We also wanted to improve the scent And for the lion's share,
That is actually the
oh my
biggest
gosh,
feedback I read online.
it has been such a battle with this. So
Yeah.
we've done enough testing where we know that it's over like 95% of people have no issue with the smell. But we're discovering that we never said in our instructions, and to the point of constant learning as a business, when we normally worked with all of our testing, and when it was done testing in the chemical labs, and it was done testing with consumer
Yeah.
testing, almost all of the circumstances were done with newer sweaters. So someone has purchased it, washed it, um, shrunk it, and then they're trying to fix it. What we're discovering is that there is a very small subset of people who have shrunk something and then they wear it and then they put it in the back of the pile, but they haven't washed it again. And we're discovering that the mixture of what it appears to be deodorant slash whatever sort of, if someone took it to the dry cleaners, some of the treatments that they use, it's
The
negative.
chemicals are mixing.
It's interacting with our product and creating an odor. And that's
Wow.
because that's not something that we at least right now can control. We're
Yeah.
going back into the lab and saying, is there something that we need to potentially have in like a little baggie that we say to people, included in the mixtures, that it actually
Yeah.
neutralizes some external factors that are, at least to this point, haven't been in our
Right.
control. But I cannot tell you how crazy it has been for us to try to, because we know, and at first we were going crazy, like how is it possible that someone can be having a negative odor scent? And then so what we did is we started asking people. I'm sure it was annoying, but we said, when did you buy this? Did you wash it? Did you wear it before you tried to unshrink it? And we're starting to see a little bit of a pattern there
Yeah.
that's giving us some information.
You're trying to
But
play
that's
Sherlock
that's
Holmes with
what
it.
people don't
Yeah.
realize is that we're not trying to be static here. Every iteration, we're saying, okay, what have we learned from this huge batch that's sold that's making this better? Because at the end of the day, prior to April of 2014, this did not exist at all.
Yeah.
So
Surprisingly.
when you pick up a Tide or a Woolite today, it is the product of years and years of finessing.
Yeah.
It is not the same Woolite or Tide that came out at the beginning of the stage. So
Right.
we're working, we're working on it.
So, since you're holding me to one last question, I'm just going to state a couple that I was going to ask, but I'm not going to.
All right.
I thought an interesting one, the grommet, I thought was interesting, where you kind of got your start. I think people should look that up because you sold an initial run that sold out very quickly, and that was interesting early on to get some traction. The future of Unshrinkit, because I know you probably have products in the pipeline or ideas, so I was going to ask about that. But what I will ask is, and I have to put a plug in for the sponsor about, imagine if you can combine all software tools you currently run your e-commerce business in a one centralized cloud platform at a fraction of the cost. Would people do it? Of course they would. It's Skubana. They do all that, and I personally actually use them. And what I love about them is, for you, actually it automates the entire 3PL communication, so inventory management, so you don't oversell if you're on Amazon or eBay or in your warehouse. So I love that about them, and they also have a SKU profitability, so I know which product is actually profitable and which one isn't.
Right.
Which is huge. So my question is around software, because you were talking about the Mark Cuban team being so intricate in looking at the hosting and the optimization. So tell people a little bit about the tools you use, the software, is from an e-commerce entrepreneur standpoint.
I have to give a shout out to my web developer. So I worked with a guy out of Los Angeles named Nick. He's IM Managers. And I called him the Friday after we found out about Shark Tank and said, hey, I love the website that you built for us. Just wanted to give you a heads up that we're going to be on Shark Tank, and we're expecting tens of thousands of people visiting it. Not over a week, but in like 5-minute period at the outset. And I've done some updates to the website, but it's probably not Shark Tank ready. And he and his team basically dropped everything and spent almost 10 hours a day between the day I told them to the day we launched, looking at every single aspect of our website. So to your question, one, we looked at rejiggering the website so it was highly streamlined. We then added Cloudflare and changed my hosting to a combination of Cloudflare and Liquid Web, because we wanted to make sure that we could actually withstand a lot of the the intense traffic that was coming.
Mm-hmm.
We were working with AdRoll for retargeting.
Mm-hmm.
We were, oh my goodness, there's like a whole stuff going on right now. We had Zopum running our customer service on our site so that people could engage with us real time as they were asked if they had any questions. And meanwhile, so our website is based off of WordPress. We basically went through and stress test every single plugin that we had. We eliminated things that we didn't need. We compressed every single piece of content that I had on there. From an inventory perspective, a lot of that was managed and assisted by Amazon. Fun story, the night of Shark Tank, we had a pallet worth of product that was outside of the fulfillment center in Hazleton, Pennsylvania. And when you're a large company like that and there's a whole process for getting inventory in, no one wanted to rush. And by rush, I mean walk outside to the truck and tag that our product was in the system so that it would show up as being available to people on Prime. No one wanted to rush that process. And my husband, on a whim, said, well, I read somewhere that Jeff Bezos reads all of his email. So maybe you should just email him. And I said, you mean like Jeff at Amazon.com, like email Jeff Bezos and ask him? And they said, yes. And I said, okay. Okay. So I emailed Jeff at Amazon.com and said, hey, here is my product ID. Here's my name. Here is what we're expecting. Here's the fulfillment center in which it's going. It would mean the world to us if we could have an additional 2,000 of our bottles in the inventory before Shark Tank airs tonight. I never heard back from him, but in 2 hours, I got a call from the Amazon Executive Seller Support Services saying that an executive had brought to their attention that we were having issues with the product and that they had looked into the situation over the past 45 minutes and were able to accelerate our product getting into the fulfillment center so it would be marked as Prime. So that wasn't a e-commerce software platform. That was just damn good customer service from a CEO of a really large company. And to me, what was funny was I think I mentioned at the very beginning of the interview that we had hundreds of emails afterwards, and
like 800.
There were important emails, and then there were like, this could lead to a huge sale or a huge partnership, and then there were a lot of one-off customer emails just saying, I saw you on Shark Tank, loved you, can't wait to use you. And when Jeff made that happen that Friday night, I swore to myself, I said, I will not sleep more than 5 hours a night until I make it through all of these emails, because if he can do it at his level with the scope of his company, then damn it, I can respond to these people too and engage with them like a person.
That's the best story of all time, Desiree. That's the best story of all time.
To this day, I mean, I wrote him back on Thanksgiving Day to say, one of the people I'm most grateful for this past year is you, because you showed me what true customer service is like, and you surprised me on a night where there were already going to be a lot of surprises. So crazy.
That's a perfect
I know people think that Amazon is just destroying the world some days, but I will tell you that they've earned every piece of goodwill they've had, because if their CEO can still do that today, then that says a lot about
That's a perfect place. I can't even ask another question. That's a perfect place to end it. Desiree, I appreciate you coming on. Everyone should check out Unshrinkit.com. Where should people reach out to you or check out online? Where should they go?
Oh, for me, or
for you, the company. Where do you want to point them to?
Directly, they can email Desiree at Unshrinkit.com.
Yeah, check it out on Amazon. Check it out on their website. Desiree, fantastic. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Jeremy.
All right.